Okay, so I'm recording now. So when we get started with doing some colors, I'm going to start on this first frame. And let's take a quick look. So I kind of updated my final inks. And so I'm going to zoom in a little bit. If we watch this, that's what it kind of looks like. And so I've kind of cleaned everything up. It's not super different than my first version of the inks, but you can kind of see that I've kind of connected lines where they weren't connected before. I've kind of like smoothed things out and taken out little edges and stuff like that. So again, you don't have to do that. It kind of depends on what style you're going for. But for coloring things, it definitely makes it easier if we've kind of cleaned things up and take out all the little edges and stuff like that. So I'm just going to start with this frame here. I've got my final inks here. Again, I might want to duplicate this layer, so I can always go back to it. So I'm going to duplicate this layer, and I'll call this final colors. And then I'll turn off this other layer and lock it. So, you're going to end up having lots and lots of layers. There's some things you could do to organize these things, like you could make symbols and do stuff like that, but I'm just going to leave this as is for now. Another thing that you can do over here is you can make your layers smaller. It's not a huge difference, but you can go between small, medium, and tall. So you have a little bit more room there. Of course, I'm on the projector, so my resolution is quite small. So there's if you're working full screen, you have a lot more space on the screen to kind of move stuff around. But anyway, I want to get my reference image in here, so I'm going to add another layer here. Just call this reference colors. And for this, if I want to add an image, I can probably just drag and drop, but I might open up the library. Here's my library here. And now I'm going to open up my File Explorer, and I'm just going to drag my reference image into the library. And then I can put it on the stage. And let's put it behind here. And I'm going to hide it, of course, but one thing that's nice about having a reference image like this is, I'm going to zoom in actually, if I'm trying to pick some colors to use for my character, what I can do, I'm going to open a couple windows. So I'm going to open up my swatches, and you can see the default swatches here. It's just a bunch of different colors. So I'll open this up, and then I can also, I don't have a lot of space. You'll have more space to do this, but I can open up my main color window here. And so what I can do is I can choose colors that are in my reference image using my color picker. So where's my color picker? My interface is really tiny, so I don't see the color picker. Okay, maybe I have to, there we go. Okay, so I have to just click on the color here, and then I can pick out colors. So if I want like a color for my cat, I can choose like a gray color, maybe something like that. And I can then go over to my swatch. So once I have a color picked, I can make a new swatch. I could say this is my astronaut cat character, and I can just click the plus button. It's a little annoying. I have to make sure this is clicked here, but I can also drag stuff around. So if I like a color from here, I can drag it down here. Or if I like one of these gradients, I can throw it in here. And the thing that's nice about a swatch is that we can go back and very easily choose like a limited range of colors, so we don't have to like keep finding the colors over and over again. So we have a color there, and maybe I'll choose like some colors. I actually don't have that much color in the astronaut. It's a lot of white and gray, but maybe I'll try to get like, I don't know, something from the suit here, like this blue color is kind of nice. So I'll select that and click the plus button, and there I've got that blue color. And so I can keep adding colors to the swatches that way. I can also just, choose whatever color I want. I can just open this up, and let's say I want like a red color for like a detail. I can just say, this is a nice red, maybe up here. Or I can go here and say, okay, what's a nice red color? Maybe something like that. And once I find that color, whatever the current color is, if I click on my swatch and click the plus, I'll get that color in my swatch. And so now I've got this nice little palette that I can just reference And I can dock this as well if I want to keep this visible. I can, dock it somewhere like over here, although that's not really where I want it. I can, put it somewhere, whoops, that I'll have it accessible. So as I go through each frame, I'll have the colors that I want to use. So anyway, I'm going to close this and let's dock my swatches right here. So I can just open that from there. And now I'm just going to hide my reference layer and lock it. And so now let's go in and start to add some color. So the first tool that will add color sort of like across a whole shape is the bucket tool. And if I hit K on the keyboard, that'll open the bucket tool. So I need to have like a, something to fill in. So let's say I wanted to fill in the ground. I could click on the ground, could unlock it, and now I can fill in this area with the bucket tool. Oh, it's not letting me. I probably need to have some other lines in here. So let's just make a line down here and just connect these. So this is another thing we'll see with Animate. It's pretty sophisticated about the way that it adds color, but you kind of need these different areas. Okay, so now we've got our bucket tool. For the ground, I probably just want like a gray color. So now I've got this little gray color. So that looks good. And now I can get rid of these extra lines. I don't really need these. And if I double click, it'll select all the lines that are connected. Now I can zoom in and I've got this nice gray background. I could say, you know what, I don't need this ground plane anymore. I just want the gray. You could kind of decide what you want to do there. But that's one way of filling in the color is with the bucket tool. And that's how we can fill in our main colors. But one of the problems or one of the sort of tricks with the bucket tool is that you can't have gaps in between the lines. Well, actually you can, but you have to kind of have a setup for that. So let's lock our ground for a second and let's look at our character. So I'm going to choose the final colors. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. And so here's my character. You can see that there are places where there are shapes that are fully contained. And then there's some places where there's gaps. There's some places where the shapes are not connected. So if I fill in the character, so I'll choose the bucket tool, and let's go to my swatch, and let's choose this cat color that I got. Notice how when I try to fill in the whole body of the character, it doesn't work. When I try to fill in certain contained areas, okay, it's not, it should work there. Maybe I need to move this up. Huh. Okay, I don't know why. It should work there. It's working there, obviously. Well, I haven't gotten to that part yet. But yeah, we're going to do that. But this should work, right? Like this little shape?
It should, unless it's something separate.
Yeah. So normally if you have a contained shape like that, you should be able to fill it in pretty easily. This looks contained, but it may not be. So I could get my mouse tool and kind of pull these apart and see if there's like maybe something that's not overlapping correctly. But I don't see it. There we go. Okay, I don't know what changed, but there we go. So we can fill that in.
I think when you pulled the first one, it actually connected.
It connected to the other side. Yeah. Okay, so normally if the shape is completely contained, we can just fill it in. It's easy. So like this ear. Okay. This should, I probably have to pull this down. Normally I don't have this much trouble with this. Okay. But if you have gaps, so like, for example, this leg has a very obvious gap right there. If you have a gap, what you can do, there's a tool here that will either close gaps or not close gaps. So if you have a small gap, it should close. Let's see, maybe like here. There we go. Okay. So if I wanted to do those, I can do that. That one works with the small gap. Let's see. With this one, no. The leg that's a larger gap. So then there's like medium gaps. Okay, so that was a medium gap. And then there's large gaps. Okay, so you can set those gaps, and that's going to help you fill in those areas. It's not necessarily going to be perfect. So like you can see right here that this doesn't really look like it's lined up. So that's when we can go in and use brushwork to fix that kind of thing. But there's going to be some areas like this leg, there's a big gap right there. So how do we fix that? So there's actually a few different ways to do that. But one way that people will do a lot is with Animate, if I use different colors, that'll kind of separate my different parts. So what I could do is I could get like a pencil. Oh, that's the pen. I have to hit Shift Y. So I'll get the pencil and I'll just choose a color that's like very much not the rest of my design. And I'll draw like a line there. Say that's how far I wanted the fill to go. Now I can, oh God. This is really not doing what I want it to do today. Whoops. Okay, so now, why is that? Okay, I don't know why it's kind of glitchy right now, but there we go. So again, you can see I can fill that in now. And then if I take my selection tool again, so I'm hitting V again to get the selection tool, now I can just delete that green section. So that's one way to kind of go about it if I have like a fill that I just want a certain area. So for example, what if I want to fill the head a different color than the body? What I could do, if I try to fill this head, it's not going to let me because there's too many big gaps, but I could do the same thing. I can get my pencil, so I'm going to hit Shift Y, and then I'm just going to draw like a green area where I want it to connect. So I can draw like that maybe. Oh, I have to set, okay, for the pencil tool, you might need to set it, if I do straighten, it's going to make straight lines, so I probably want to set this to either smooth or ink. I'll set ink. And so I might want to do like, maybe I want it to go down a little bit, so I can do like that, and then I can fill that in. I can fill this in up here. And there's some parts where it doesn't quite get there, so I can just tap that, and then we get that there. And so if you want to have different colors for different sections, then I can just delete that. And so we have a nice little section here. This might be a little too much, so I can go in with the eraser and kind of clean this up a little bit. And it'll kind of smooth that out for me. Although it's not really smoothing it a lot. Okay. Anyway, so let's say we want a different color for the head and the body. So I'll get my bucket tool back. I'll go to my fills. And I've actually been using this gray color. So let's use this other color here. And I can kind of fill this in. Now that there are some fills here, it's going to let me fill the fills that are already there. I don't know why it won't let me fill here. Okay, maybe if I select this. Okay. Actually, that's a good example for a different approach, so let's just leave that for now. And let's leave this stuff. I'll just fill in here and here, here. This is kind of an ugly color. I'd probably change this, but I'm going to leave it for now just to save time. So I'll have to fill that in. And this actually did pretty good. Okay, so we've got our fills. So now let's go in and clean up a little bit. So besides just using a fill tool, what we can use is the brush tool. Okay, so if we use B, this is just a fill here. So I can do like just a fill versus when I use the paintbrush, this is a stroke. And so fills and strokes have different properties. Fills just kind of fill up an area. Strokes have like points on them. So I'm going to get rid of these. And so with Animate, with the brush tool, there's a few different ways that you can fill. So those are all under here. There's paint normally. This just adds fill everywhere. So if I do this, it's just going to add it on top of things. And notice if we're on the same layer, I'm going to increase the brush size to like 8. If I'm on the same layer and I do like a big fill like this, it actually deletes and then kind of moves things around. So Animate is basically trying to guess like what am I actually trying to do. And so it's going to take out some strokes and leave some in there, but it's putting everything on the same layer. So if I grab this fill and delete it, all that other stuff is gone now. If I wanted those to be separate, they'd have to be on different layers. So just going in and drawing, whoops, with the brush is usually not how I want to do it. There's other ways to do it. So there's paint fills only. This means that it's only going to paint on top of other fills. So basically, if I do it like this, you'll notice the stroke stays there, and anything that's not a fill also goes away. So this is a really nice way to quickly add some shading, although it did take that stroke away. It shouldn't have done that. Maybe that was a fill, I don't know. So I can add some shading there, and it's only going to go on top of places that have a fill, not a stroke or nothing. So if I wanted to add some shading, maybe I would change the color. So I would grab that color and then maybe modify it a little bit. So let's do hue, and maybe I'd make it a little bit lighter, and then I could go in and add some shading like that. If you like kind of a rough, sketchy look, this is probably how you're going to want to add your shading. I can just go in, add some shading, and it's not going to delete like the rest of my character. It's just going to add a little bit of texture there. So that's probably what you want to do if you are working just with the brush. So I'm going to save that. Now I can fix this up a little bit. So let's go back here and just kind of fill this in a little bit and smooth this out. And then for some of the areas that didn't quite fill in, so like down here, there's another tool that I can use, which is paint inside. This means it's only going to paint inside of stuff. So if I choose that one, and then I need to select my color, and I paint around here. Oops. Okay, that's doing, did I select behind? No, for some reason that is what would happen if I was doing paint behind. But paint inside should just go inside. I don't know exactly. Maybe.
You have to start on the inside.
What?
You have to start on the inside.
Oh, I have to start on the inside. Okay, so if I go like this. I never knew that. Okay, cool. Thank you. So yeah, so I can use paint inside to get those little details. And then I can fill this thing out a little bit. That's too far. Okay, so maybe I have to start here. Oops, okay. For that one, I might want to use paint behind. So that'll just paint behind stuff. This is cool if I want to add in, like if I wanted to add in a shadow, paint behind is useful. So let's say if I have something like this and I just want to go like that, it's only going to paint behind what I already have. So it's not going to cover anything up, but I can kind of like draw whatever I want and it'll just go behind everything. This could be good if I wanted to like, I don't know, if I wanted to do some type of expression. So like, you know, I wanted to like do a bunch of stuff up here. Like maybe he's like freaking out. I could draw like a bunch of stuff and it'll just go behind the character, behind the art that I already have. Okay. So those are a couple of techniques. If I want to do something like that, I'll probably use paint fills and to do some shading. Maybe I want to like do some detailing, so maybe I'll draw like a nice little line on the rocket or something like that, just to add a little detail here. You can go through and add some stuff like that. And then if I want to do kind of shading, I could choose a color. So I'm actually like not using my swatches at all, so it's not the best example, but it'd be good when I go to like the next frame, I can get these colors really easily. What I should do, so for example, if I want to paint a little shading, I can take this fill and just make it a little bit darker. Okay. And then what I should do is I should add that to my swatch so I don't have to like figure that out again. So I would just choose this swatch and add it here. And then this is a darker version of, oh, I don't even have this gray color that I keep using in here. So let's get that in here as well. Okay. So now I can choose this darker color. I've got my paint fills only, and I can just add a little shading in right there. This is definitely like a fill, which is why that keeps disappearing. So I screwed that up at some point. But if I'm careful, I'll get this right. You can add in a little fill here. This is just for some shadow here. And then maybe I would want to do some shadows down here as well, but now I have to change the color, right? Because it's a different color here. So what I could do is get this color, then make it a bit darker down here. And it doesn't have to be like, I could go over here if I wanted to just like add a little more color for some reason. That could be cool. Although I'm really making this kind of gross looking. Anyway, here's this color. I'm gonna move it over here, and then I can go in, and I'm still just using the brush tool. I could do a little shading like this, or if I wanted to, since that leg is in the background, this really is like poop colored basically, so I probably want to change this color. But anyway, I can do a little shading there, and then if I want to just fill this back leg in because it's completely in shadow, I just go back to the bucket tool and I fill it in. Okay, so now it looks like I just fell down in some mud or poop or something, but we're just gonna go with it. Or I could just, you know, find something a little nicer, maybe like that, and just fill those areas. Okay, that's a little less poop colored. Still looks kind of weird, but that's okay. Maybe that's like the glow. Maybe he's on Mars, and so he's getting this orange glow on his feet. Just add a little bit in there. Since I changed that color, let's add that to my swatch. And then I'll delete this poop brown that I was using, so I can just hit the delete key on there. Okay, so that's one way of doing some shading, doing some detailing. I can choose some different colors and then just shade them in with the brush and kind of keep going from there. There's a couple other ways to do it that are a little bit more sophisticated. So I want to, or not sophisticated, they just have a different look. So I want to show a couple more approaches, but we're starting to get somewhere with the character's color. It's starting to look okay. So let's go to another frame, and I'll do a couple examples. So one way that I could do this, let's get my paintbrush and get my swatches. I'm going to start with this gray and just fill in the character. Okay, and actually I want to do two different colors, but I'm just going to fill that in. So if I want the bottom part of the character to be a different color, let's do our technique again, where I'm just going to take a pencil tool, and I'm just going to draw a little line where we want our color change to happen. That's kind of gross, so let's try that again. Okay, and then let's get our bucket tool again and get our lighter gray and fill that in. Okay. Okay, and then I'll just get rid of that green. So I'm going to double click and delete, and get that green and delete. Okay, so it's not 100% perfect, but we see there's two different colors there. And so another approach that I can do with this is I can use like the lines that I was using before, the pencil lines, to kind of like create areas. So instead of brushing them in, I can continue to use the bucket tool, because the bucket tool really does go faster if I have those areas set up. So remember, I can go back to my pencil tool. I've got this bright green, so it's really easy to see. And now, let's say I'm going to turn the stroke to 1. Let's say I want like a shadow here, a shadow on the back of this ear, maybe a little shadow right there, and maybe I want a shadow here, and like a shadow down here on his butt, and then this will be shadow, but then we also want like a shadow right there, maybe a shadow right there. So all these green lines are kind of just like showing where we want shadows. We can also do highlights. I could do like a highlight there, maybe a highlight here, and maybe a little highlight there, something like that. And so with those green lines, I can create these areas, and then I can go back with the bucket tool. And let's say I'm just going to choose like I'm going to start with this gray, but let's add a little color. So let's say we're on Mars. We're going to get a little orange shadow. So I can go in with the bucket tool, whoops, and get these sections. So I can just do the sections that I've created here. Just a little one there. Oh, but now I need a slightly different color. So that's for the darker gray, but then I need a slightly lighter version for the lighter gray for these areas. Okay, and then right down here. Whoops. And so I need to cut this off, so I'm going to hit Shift-Y and just draw that there, and then go back to the bucket tool, fill that in. Okay, so I can do the same thing with the highlights. So I'm going to go back to here, grab that gray, and let's say we want like a blue highlight. I can do something like that and fill that in. Okay, and then down here, I'm going to grab this gray. I really should be adding all these to my swatches, but I'm trying to not take up too much time. So let's go to the blue area again, get something like that. So we've got some nice highlights. And now the cool thing here, so I could go through and delete all those green lines, but I can also just grab my pencil tool and just go like this. And with Animate, all the green lines that are connected, if I hit V and double click, it gets all of those green lines, and I hit delete, and now they're all gone. So that's another, multiple step process, but I can, add the colors in and not have to color everything in. I can choose an area, and then I can use the bucket fill to kind of add those in. Okay, so that's another process. You can get a slightly different look. This is more sketchy. This is more clean. Another process, this is the last one, or actually I want to show a couple other things, but I am taking up a lot of time. Yeah, I'll just show a couple more things. Another process that involves adding another technique that we haven't really seen before is basically doing the same thing. So let's do a similar setup. But in this case, instead of using different colors, I'm actually just going to use blending layers. Okay, so let's grab our bucket tool. Let's go to our swatch and choose our dark gray. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to draw a little line. Oops. Let's get our green. Okay, so we're going to do that to get the head separate. Get the bucket tool. We'll do, oops. Why isn't it changing? It's not, what? What is going on with this thing today? Swatches. It's not changing the color. Okay, I don't know what's happening with that, but let's just grab a gray color and fill it in. And then I'm just going to get a less gray color and fill in the bottom again. Okay. Okay, there we go. So now I can delete my green part. This looks a little yucky, so let's grab our brush, get this color, and just fill this in just a little bit. And then let's actually add our little detail again. So I'm going to grab like a little red color and just draw a little thing for a rocket. Okay, so this approach is a little bit different. For this one, I actually need a separate layer. So I'm going to keep this as it is, but this is pretty cool. What I'm going to do is add a layer here, and I'm going to call this like shading. And I'm going to select the same frame here and just hit F7 to create a keyframe. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to use the brush, but I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to hit D to set my default colors, and then I'm going to hit X to switch them. It's kind of hard to see, but basically when I hit X, it switches between my two colors, white and black. And when I hit D, it sets those default colors. Anyway, I'm going to get my brush and get the black color. And what I'm going to do with this that's kind of cool, if I want to shade here, I can like draw this in on this layer. Okay, so I'm just like shading this in. It looks kind of bad. Oh, I have to make sure. Oh, I need a keyframe here. I'm going to hit F7. Whoops. Oh, I have my, whoops, paint normal. Okay, set the brush back to paint normal. I'm going to lock my final colors just so I don't accidentally select something on there. And I'm just going to shade this in with black. And the cool thing that's going to happen here, right now this is just like a bunch of black mess. But what I can do is change the layer settings. So, uh-oh, this recording thing is in the way. Shoot. Okay, let's move this over here. Okay, so I have to select this frame. And under frame, there's some settings. We haven't really looked at these yet, but they're really useful for when you're doing coloring. So in this frame section, the settings I have are blend, color effects. Those are the two that I'm going to use here. So I'm going to start with blend. Instead of normal blend, which just applies the color normally, I'm going to go with overlay. And the overlay is just going to add it on top of what other color is behind it. And then for color effects, I'm going to turn on alpha. And I'm going to turn on some transparency. And let's do like 60%. And so now it's going to overlay on top of here. Oh, I accidentally made a group. Okay, let's get out of here. Okay, so now you can see that overlay. And so now, if I'm on this layer, any shading that I add in like this is just getting applied as this kind of shadow in the overlay. But what I'm doing, again, is I'm doing an overlay which basically blends this layer on whatever's below it. And then I'm setting the alpha so it's transparent, so it's only kind of applying, you know, a semi-transparent version of this. And so you can play around with those effects. There's a bunch of different blend modes, like you can do multiply. That's not going to do what we want here, but there's a bunch of different stuff in there that you can play with. And so the cool thing here is it's going to do different color effects. If I switch the color to white and I add like a little highlight here, that's just going to show up as lighter. So we get a nice little highlight. You might want to just add this in here. So now we can get this sketching. And the cool thing here is it reacts to different colors. So let's say I put a highlight here. I don't have to like change the color because all I'm doing is making a lighter version of the underlying color. Same thing here. If I put a highlight on this like rocket here, it's going to use all the same colors as what's behind it. If I switch back to black, I'm just hitting X and I'm putting black here. You can also use different colors to get different color effects as well. But I'm just using white and black just to show a highlight and a shadow. And then I can use that with like this whole leg if I want to just make this whole thing darker. I accidentally overlapped with the ground. I do want to be careful about that. So, and then I could add a shadow back here. I can add a shadow here. Okay, so that's another way that we can go through and add colors, but then add highlighting and shadows really easily. Okay, so again, keep in mind, whichever approach you take, you are going to have to do this for every frame. So what I would do after this is I would just go to the next frame. And, you know, I'd have to add in my colors here. I'd have to go up here, hit F7 and add new shading in. And so I have to repeat the whole process. So the first part of this assignment is really to like figure out your color scheme, get an aesthetic that works for you, that looks good. And then once you figure that out, work on it for each frame of your walk cycle. So basically you can repeat the same workflow. And so you can get used to it and you can quickly do the rest of the frames. So work out the color that you want first, and then apply it to each frame so that you can get that workflow. So you're not like basically starting from scratch every single time. All right, I went a little bit longer on that than I meant to. But once you're done with all of that, you're basically going to submit this the same way we did previously. Oh, this is actually saying to do QuickTime. But we don't want to do QuickTime for this one because we can just do the same thing we did last time, which is the animated GIF. So I'll update that. I don't know why they switched this to QuickTime all of a sudden because it's basically the same thing. I'll update that. We're going to do another animated GIF here, just like we did last time. It's going to be the same 8-frame walk cycle, so there's no real reason to do it as a video. So I'll update that in a second. Anyway, I'm going to stop here.